Hey, so let's say you woke up one morning in feudal Japan. The sun's barely up, mist is rising over quiet rice fields, and the air smells like charcoal and river water. Pretty peaceful, right? You're thinking of cherry blossoms. Poetic. Sword fights may be a tea ceremony with some delicate cups and quieter than average conversations. But give it 15 minutes. That soft light? That's not ambience. That's warning. Because what you've actually woken up in isn't peace. It's a centuries-old pressure cooker, where everyone knows their place, no one questions the script. And stepping out of line doesn't just get you a slap on the wrist, it gets you erased. Quietly. Elegantly. Permanently. You weren't born into freedom here. You were born into position, a role. Maybe it's a good one. Maybe you're a samurai and you get a sword and some rice stipends and your family name etched into the official records. But more likely, you're a peasant, you own dirt, you owe rice, and you carry centuries of obedience in your spine. The ladder here doesn't go up, it doesn't move. You're not supposed to climb it, you're supposed to bow to it, hard. And every day you get it right is a day you survive. But let's say you are a samurai, don't get too comfortable. That sword, it's not a symbol of glory, it's a warning label. It says, this person lives under a code so strict it could kill him. Bushido isn't a slogan, it's a manual for how to die properly. You mess up in public, you bow too shallowly, you breathe the wrong way in front of your lord. That's dishonor. And dishonor has one solution: kneeling, a short blade, and silence. The kind that lasts forever. If you're a woman, the game's even smaller. Your place is pre-written and it doesn't include your voice. Your freedom ends where your father's opinion begins. Marriage isn't about love. It's a transaction. You're taught to serve tea, birth sons, and maybe write poetry if no one important is looking. Dignity. That's something you perform for others, not something you own. Even hygiene becomes performance. You wake up and wash with ice water from a bucket because not doing so would make you spiritually filthy. Bathhouses are communal, silent, judgmental places. You don't soak to relax. You soak to prove you're not shameful. Fingernails, posture, robe folds, every detail says who you are and how seriously you take your existence. You're not clean, you're compliant. And then there's death. It's not a tragic interruption here, it's a scheduled event, a social obligation. Sometimes it comes from illness or famine or childbirth gone wrong. Sometimes it comes because someone in power decided you were inconvenient. And when it comes, you're expected to meet it beautifully. No fear, no noise, just a bow and a final breath, as if you're apologizing for taking up too much space. So yeah, feudal Japan, it's beautiful, in that soft, haunting, tightly wound kind of way, the kind that makes you straighten your back and lower your eyes, the kind that demands perfection. Not because anyone's watching, but because someone always might be. Let's say, for the sake of curiosity, you start your morning in feudal Japan thinking you're someone important. Maybe you helped with the harvest. Maybe you're a merchant whose rice shop just started turning a profit. Maybe you just feel a little confident today. That's cute, but no. Because here's the thing, in this world, importance flows downhill, and you're standing somewhere near the roots. Your existence, while technically acknowledged, doesn't carry weight. Not really. There is always someone above you, someone watching, someone who could decide on a whim that your usefulness has expired. You don't live in a democracy. You live in a hierarchy carved out of tradition, steel, and silence. At the top, the emperor, divine in theory, a ghost in practice. He doesn't rule, he lingers. Then there's the shogun, the military dictator who actually holds power but still plays the part of humble servant. Beneath him, the daimyo, the feudal lords who own your land and your seasons. Each commands an army, collects taxes, and keeps a suspicious eye on everyone just beneath them. Which brings us to the samurai. Warriors, yes, but also glorified middle management with swords and permanent homework. And then there's you, a peasant, a craftsman, a merchant. Technically part of society, legally beneath it. You don't rise through merit. There's no job application, no promotion. Your family was born into mud or fabric or steel, and you'll stay there no matter how good you are. The rules weren't built to let you climb. They were designed to keep you from asking why you're at the bottom in the first place. Even the samurai, those sword-swinging enforcers of dignity, aren't free. They live on rice stipends, fear losing face, and train daily for wars that may never come but shame that always might. Their authority depends on silence from below and submission from above. They obey their lord the way a blade obeys its scabbard, tightly and without question. If your lord fails, that's your fault. If your village doesn't meet the rice quota, that's your fault. If a storm wipes out half the harvest, you guessed it, still your fault. And your punishment isn't just being yelled at. It's losing land, losing food, sometimes losing your head. You're not allowed to leave your village without permission. You're not allowed to speak out of turn, and God's forbid you catch the attention of someone in power. Because in feudal Japan, visibility is risk, respect is vertical, and power is something that presses down, never lifts up. Let's say, somehow, you find yourself noticed. Maybe you spoke too confidently. Maybe you wore something too fine. Maybe your neighbor, the one who's always bowing too low and smiling too wide, whispered your name during the village headman's evening tea. Whatever it was, it's too late now. You're on a list. Not written, not spoken, but understood. Because attention from power isn't praise. It's a warning shot. You'll be watched now. Subtly, casually, like a wild animal that wandered, too close to the estate gates. No one accuses you of anything. Not directly. They just ask more questions. They stop laughing when you enter the room. The village scribe forgets your name during records. The tax collector remembers it a little too well. This is how power works here, not with thunder but with weather. Quiet, cold, constant. Even when you're loyal, it isn't enough. Because loyalty in feudal Japan isn't measured by intent. It's measured by obedience. You do as you're told, exactly when and how you're told. Not because it's fair, but because the person above you did the same, and the one above them, and the one above them. It's generational gravity. Everyone pressing down so the structure doesn't crack. And yet the irony. The system isn't stable, it's constantly on edge. Lords spy on each other. Samurai test loyalty through impossible demands. The shogun fears rebellion dressed as respect. Even the emperor, the living god, spends his days surrounded by protocol so dense he can barely move without triggering a poem, a bow, or a minor diplomatic incident. So no, you're not important here. But you are necessary. Your work feeds the system. Your silence maintains its balance. Your fear is the oil that keeps the gears turning. And if one day you vanish from the records, the fields, or the bathhouse, the hierarchy doesn't collapse. It just tightens. You'd think that kind of pressure would spark rebellion, that someone would eventually snap, rise up, tear down the old system and carve something better from the silence. But it doesn't happen like that. Not here, not in feudal Japan, because by the time you realize how tightly you're held, you've already learned how to hold yourself even tighter. That's the real brilliance of the structure. It's not enforced with force. It's enforced with expectation, with ritual, with belief. Everyone plays their role because they've been trained to, praised for it, punished when they forget. Your own mind becomes your most loyal guard. You don't need chains when every part of your life already fits perfectly into a box you were told to be grateful for. And sometimes, even when you catch a glimpse of the machine, when the injustice becomes too sharp, the hierarchy too absurd, you still don't revolt. You bow deeper. Because even if you're falling apart inside, you know what happens to those who stand too tall. Power here isn't worn. It's radiated. It doesn't shout. It waits. You feel it in the way doors are opened for some and closed in your face, in the way your neighbor's son was punished for asking why he couldn't read, in the way your grandmother whispered stories of an ancestor who spoke too freely and whose name is never mentioned anymore. But what keeps the system alive isn't fear alone. It's pride. Pride in obedience. Pride in tradition. The belief that by playing your part, even the smallest, most invisible part, you are helping preserve something ancient, elegant, and sacred. And maybe that's the cruelest twist of all, because you're not important here. But if you disappear, someone else will step into your place, bow the same way, speak the same lines, and no one will notice you're gone. Gone. You wake before the sun, though it has not yet risen above the hills. The chill in the room is sharp, not just cold, but biting, the kind that seeps into your bones long before your eyes adjust to the darkness. Your breath puffs out in little clouds. The thatched roof above your head crackles faintly under the weight of snow. Somewhere outside, a crow caws, perhaps from the crooked pine that leans toward the rice field you haven't touched in months. This is feudal Japan in winter, and you are a peasant. Your home is a single-room structure, walls made of thin wooden panels and paper. There is no insulation. The fire pit in the middle of the room, called an irori, has gone cold in the night. You know better than to keep it burning while everyone sleeps. Fires consume more than just firewood when left untended. There's a clay, pot by the embers with a bit of leftover rice porridge inside. It's frozen solid. Before you move, you listen. This is a habit drilled into you, not for fear of robbers, but for fear of waking your father too early. He is not cruel, but he is tired. And when he is tired, he is quiet. And when he is quiet, the whole house becomes wary. Beside you, your younger brother whimpers in his sleep. He's curled tight beneath a woven straw mat, shared with the family's one warm blanket. You sit up, slowly. You try not to shiver. Winter in the countryside is not something you prepare for. It simply arrives and you adjust your expectations accordingly. You already know what today will look like. Fetch water from the stream, chop firewood, mend tools. No rice to plant, no weeding to do. The land sleeps. You, unfortunately, do not. The CE2 first step out of the house is always the worst. The snow is ankle deep, packed overnight, icy on top. You do not have shoes. Not really, just waraji, sandals made of straw, woven by your mother and repaired by you when the snow eats away at their fibers. They are meant for walking on dry roads, not navigating through snowdrifts. Your toes are already numb. You shuffle toward the communal well. The bucket rope is frozen. You tug gently, coaxing the fibers loose with warm breath and careful hands. It takes longer than usual. A neighbor passes, an old woman with a basket on her back. She doesn't speak, just nods. In winter, words freeze too. Back home, you light the fire with what little kindling you saved from the night before. No waste is allowed. The wood must last until spring. Ashes are collected, reused, repurposed. Soap is made from ash and rice. Bran, you will use it later when you scrub your feet at the edge of the house, your skin raw and red. Cleanliness matters. Not because anyone's watching, but because they might. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is warm water poured over. A lump of barley rice and fermented radish. It stings your teeth, you eat quickly. Outside, the village begins to move. Smoke spirals from a dozen low chimneys. Children carry bundles of kindling twice their size. Women stoop over buckets of frozen laundry. A man with a hunched back calls. Out about a broken cartwheel. There is no school today. There is rarely school anyway. Not in your part of the province. The headman's son learns to write with a brush, but you learn to tie straw ropes, carve tools, and listen for approaching wolves. In winter, wolves come closer to the village, desperate, starving. So are you some days. You walk to the edge of the field, not to work but to check the traps. You set them days ago with your uncle. Small noose traps hidden beneath twigs and leaves. Maybe a hare, maybe nothing. Today it's nothing. Tomorrow, maybe a foot caught in frostbite. The village. Elder says winters used to be harsher. His stories are always colder than the real thing. You don't know if that's true or if he just likes to be remembered. Your job today is to repair the reed mats along the side of the house. They block wind, but only just. The reeds crack when dry. You sit cross-legged, slicing new lengths, weaving them in silence. Your hands go numb every few minutes and you rub them briskly. Blow into your palms, repeat. You think about your cousin in the next village who burned his hand badly last week. They had to use soy paste and prayers. He's lucky to still have fingers. In the afternoon, the sun comes out. It doesn't bring warmth, just shadows and sharp light. You carry compost to the pile behind the house, careful not to step on the frozen pickled turnips buried in a box. They're meant for March if you make it that far. Inside, your mother boils miso soup, just water with miso paste and 2 floating scallion tops. It smells stronger than it tastes. You don't complain. Tonight, the family will sleep again in a circle around the fire. You'll take turns staying awake to keep it going. It's not for comfort, it's for survival. If the fire dies, someone won't wake up. Your father speaks only once all day. He asks how much wood is left. You tell him the truth, but you wish you didn't. Winter here isn't a season. It's a test, a quiet, endless test of patience, repetition, and enduring small discomforts until they become unbearable, and then still enduring them. And that's just the first day. But what happens when the snow doesn't melt by spring and your Lord's tacksmen arrive anyway? You were taught that spring arrives with the plum blossoms. That one day in early March the air softens, the earth loosens its grip on the roots, and the stream sings again. But this year, something is off. The snow clings longer. The frost deepens instead of fading. It's now late March and your family is still burning wood like it's mid-January. Your father's face has grown more quiet than usual. Not angry, not anxious, just blank. He knows what you now understand too. The snow isn't the problem. Time is, because no matter what the weather says, the tax is coming. The rice you do not have is still owed. The quota doesn't melt when the frost does. You're 13, maybe 14. In some places that would mean school or apprenticeship. Here it means you're strong enough to carry a bucket in each hand without tipping, and old enough to face the truth. Survival in a village like yours depends less on the harvest and more on the calculations made by people who have never seen your fields. By now the thatched roof has begun to sag from repeated snow weight. The beams creak with every gust. You've patched the reed matting 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Smoke from the fire has begun staining the upper beams a permanent grey. You like the color. It looks warmer than the air feels. The snow outside is melting, but not quickly enough. Everything smells of wet straw and wood rot. Your mother says, "This is the most dangerous part of the season, not the deep winter, but the transition." Roads become sludge. Hooves sink. Carts break. People fall ill. Water is everywhere, and it carries sickness. Your little brother has been coughing. A shallow, barking thing that makes your mother wince. There's no medicine, only old advice. Keep him warm, give him broth, and hope the ancestors are watching kindly this year. The food stores are nearly gone. 1 jar of pickled burdock, a small bag of barley, some dried fish, salted so long ago it's more bone than meat. But there's no point in panic. You've been hungry before, you know how to breathe past the ache. You go to the temple to ask for help. Not with words, of course. You simply sweep the front steps and clean the stone lanterns. The priest watches, but doesn't say anything. A day later he sends your family some rice flour and dried persimmons, enough for 1 night of full stomachs. You thank him by not making eye contact. Everyone knows gratitude here is best shown through silence. Meanwhile, the village headman has begun gathering names. Every house will owe a portion of tax rice by the end of the month. It doesn't matter that your fields are still under snow. It doesn't matter that your last harvest was low. The Lord's men will arrive and they will want what they were promised. You've seen what happens when a family can't pay. Last year it was the Takamura household. Their field had flooded. The headman tried to advocate for them. Didn't matter. The oldest son was taken to work at the nearest castle town, essentially sold into labor. The father died the next winter. The house sits empty now, boarded up with bamboo slats and whispers. Your father has started sharpening the sickle. Not because there's anything to cut, but because the motion keeps his hands busy, and busy hands keep despair at a distance. That night, the family eats in silence. Even the firewood crackles like it's trying to whisper bad news. You think about what would happen if you offered to go to the castle town yourself. Maybe work as a servant. Maybe save your brother from being next. But your mother reads your face too well. She places her hand on yours briefly. It's the only time she touches you all winter. You don't talk about it again. Instead, you wake up the next day and fetch water. You fix the gate latch. You walk to the ridge and check for wild greens in the patch near the shrine. You find 2, bitter but edible. Your father asks no questions. He just eats. At night, the family tries to sleep with their feet toward the fire, heads buried under layered cloth. You dream of summer, of tall grass and muddy sandals, and the sound of frogs at night. You wake to frost again. One day, the village headman makes an announcement. The Lord's men are coming a week early. Panic doesn't look like screaming, it looks like people walking faster. It sounds like axes striking logs with more force. It smells like smoke from fires being fed with thatch that should have been saved for repairs. People begin to trade, tools for grain, cloth for millet. One family tries to leave the village in the night. They're caught, brought back. Not. Punished but shamed. The headman says running only makes it worse. You know he's right, your family prepares, you sweep the entrance, your mother polishes the cooking pot until it shines. Your brother scrubs the floor with warm ash and water. You pile the remaining rice into a woven basket and cover it with cloth. It's not enough, but it's what you have. The morning they arrive is strangely bright. The snow is mostly gone, but the ground is still half frozen. 3 men ride in, one of them carries a ledger, another has a sword. The third doesn't speak at all. They do not dismount. Your father bows low. You do too. Your knees press into the mud. You keep your head down as they count what you've given. They speak briefly, not to you. You hear the word short. You feel your father's spine straighten slightly, but then settle. They take the rice. They leave without another word. No one dies, not today. Later the headman visits. He explains that the shortfall will be noted, that if the next season goes poorly, your family may have to send someone to labor duty. He doesn't say more. He doesn't need to. That evening your mother roasts the last sweet potato over the fire. You each get 1 bite. It tastes like warmth, briefly. Outside, the first frog croaks from somewhere near the flooded fields. But you wonder, what happens next year when there's nothing left to burn? By early April, the mud in the village lanes is ankle deep. The snow is gone, but its absence doesn't bring relief. Just damp socks, swollen rice paddies, and the quiet dread that your survival last winter was only an intermission. The next. Winter is already preparing, somewhere far up the mountains, where snow still sleeps on the ridges and the winds are sharpening their blades. You begin your mornings earlier now. The birds return and the frogs sing in the ditch, but you don't feel like celebrating. Winter taught you something. Survival doesn't mean safety. It just means you're still here to worry. The rice fields are thawed but not dry. Your father probes the soil with a stick, then tells you and your brother to start cutting new thatch for patching the roof. Repairs can't wait. The snow tore open a corner seam above your sleeping mat. For 2 months, you didn't mention it. Now you fix it with numb fingers and wet rope. The house smells of mildew and effort. The Aurori fire still burns, but it no longer commands the room. It merely lingers. You no longer sleep in a circle around it. The nights are warmer, though. Not kind. The mice are back. Your mother curses softly under her breath when she sees the rice sack chewed through. One small loss feels immense. News travels slowly. The village elder mentions a distant war between daimyo lords. No one here cares. They only care about the weather, the rice, and whether the tax quotas will go up. Spoiler, they always do. Your brother asks a question one day, whether it's better to be born in the mountains or near the castle towns. You don't know how to answer. The mountains offer isolation, but they also offer starvation. The towns offer opportunity, but only if you're born into the right clothes. You tell him the truth, it doesn't matter. You're from here. This is where you stay. A month later, a message arrives from the nearby town. The Takamura boy, the one taken last year for tax labor, has died. Fever, they say. Or maybe an accident, doesn't matter which. He was 16. The village is quiet for 3 days. Then, planting season begins. You follow the same pattern every year. The oxen, the plough, the rows, the mud. Your father mutters about the angle of the furrows. You listen and learn. You will need this knowledge soon enough. He coughs more now. It's dry and persistent. Your mother doesn't say anything, but her eyes follow him longer than usual when he leaves the house. One day the shrine priest visits again. He asks about the family, then leaves an offering, a small bundle of dried mushrooms and some coarse salt. You thank him with a bow. Gratitude, again, shown in silence. Later, you learn the mushrooms were for your father's cough. You chew, one anyway, just in case. Summer comes briefly. The sun is fierce, you work every day, your feet toughen, your back aches constantly, but your hands grow skilled. You build calluses in the shape of tools. You begin to understand how to store grain so it doesn't rot. You learn how to dry daikon so it stays crisp through February. The taxman does not return during the summer, but his shadow never leaves. Autumn arrives like a sigh. The air cools, the sky clears, and you begin to look for firewood again. The pile behind the house is half what it should be. You'll need to trade for more, or forage far. Your father's cough is worse. One night, he can't finish his barley stew. Your mother leaves the room for a long time and comes back with red eyes. You know what's coming, but you still sharpen the sickle. You still wake up early, you still tie the sandals. Then one morning in early November, the first snow falls. You step outside barefoot to feel it. It's lighter than you remember, softer, almost kind. But you know better. It is not kind, it is just the beginning. Surviving the winters of feudal Japan wasn't about heroism. It was about ritual, repetition, and resignation. Families endured not because they had choices, but because they didn't. Each season was a negotiation between hunger and honor, duty and despair. And the snow was never just weather. It was a reminder that the system was stronger than any individual within it. The snow beneath your sandals taught you something profound. Survival is a quiet, continuous act. But as the second winter begins, one question lingers. How many quiet acts can a family endure before silence becomes surrender? Before. The snow came, you stacked firewood, quietly, layer after layer under the eaves of your thatched house. You tied the bundles tightly because loose bark draws rats, and rats mean sickness. You weren't thinking about comfort. You were thinking about water, about how much you'd need to melt just to bathe. In the winter of 1687, snow began falling. In late November, heavy and without apology. By December, your village path had vanished. The shrine bell only rang once that month, muffled by drifts taller than your waist. But despite all this, the expectations of hygiene did not go away. If anything, they became more urgent, because in feudal Japan, cleanliness was not a luxury. It was a matter of order, of social discipline, and sometimes of survival. You live in a farming household in the snowy interior of Honshu under the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate. The mountains are high here, and the rivers freeze solid by January. Your family has one bathing tub carved from pine, blackened from years of use. It's placed near the kitchen hearth, where the floor stays warmest. The bath is shared. And it isn't daily, not in winter. Firewood is too scarce, and the effort to melt snow into enough water for even one good soak takes hours. So it happens, once a week, sometimes less. But when it does, it is done properly. Because to be dirty is not just unpleasant, it is seen as undisciplined, as spiritually unwell. The ritual begins long before the water touches skin. The tub is scrubbed first with rice husk ash and hot water. You boil the water in 2 kettles and carry it by hand. No one talks much while doing this. It is labor, but it's also preparation. Cleanliness starts with space. Your father bathes first. That is the rule. He is the head of the house, and his time in the tub is the warmest, the cleanest. After him, it is your mother, then your elder brother. You wait until last. The water, once steaming, is now cool and cloudy. But it still matters. You scrub with cloth made from woven hemp. Soap is rare. Your family makes its own occasionally from the ash of burned straw and animal fats. The scent is earthy, almost bitter. If there's no soap, you use nuka, rice bran. Paste, mixed with a pinch of salt. It stings a little, but it lifts the dirt. Outside, everything is frozen. Inside, the fire cracks softly under the iron pot, and steam rises in slow swirls. The smell of soot clings to the ceiling. When you finally lower yourself into the tub, your body aches from cold and work, but you feel briefly honorable, because in this world, where almost nothing is yours, not your time, not your status, not your fate, your cleanliness is one of the few things you can control. After the bath, you clean your teeth with a twig soaked in ash and brine. You twist a scrap of fiber between your fingers to pull the food from between your molars. There's no mirror. You check your face in a water bowl. Good enough. In the village, no one says anything if you look tired. But they notice if you look unclean. The rice merchant bows to your father, but his eyes flicker toward the worn hem of his robe. The priest doesn't ask about your brother's injury, but he glances once at the smudge on his heel. Cleanliness is not fashion here. It's reputation. It's ritual, it's respect, and respect, like rice, must be stored, maintained, protected. The snow falls heavier that night. You listen to the wind press against the sliding doors. Somewhere in the dark, a neighbor's fire has gone out. You hope they had time to boil water first. You pull the blanket higher and think about the next bath. It will take a day's labor to prepare, and still it must be done, because in feudal Japan, winter is harsh. But to go unwashed is harsher still, and so the question drifts above your futon as you fall asleep beneath straw blankets. What does it mean to stay pure when the world itself is frozen solid with silence and soot? In the city of Edo, the bathhouses open just after sunrise. The smoke from the wood-burning hearths rises above tiled roofs in thin grey ribbons, visible long before you hear the chatter of water and the scrape of wooden sandals on frozen ground. You arrive early. It's cold. Your breath fogs in front of you like incense. The bathhouse keeper greets you with a nod and slides open the entry screen. He doesn't ask your name. He looks at your collar, at your posture, at the way your hands are tucked properly, inside your sleeves. You've already told him everything he needs to know. Cleanliness here is a language, a form of silent self-presentation. In a society built on hierarchy and reputation, bathing isn't a personal act. It's a public declaration. The sento is not large. A single tub sits at the back, deep enough for a man to soak to his chest, wide enough for 3 or 4 people at a time. There are no partitions, there are no secrets. You strip quietly, not because you're ashamed, because there is no reason to be dramatic. First you scrub, not lightly, with purpose. You dip a bucket, pour water over your back, then begin with your arms, shoulders, and chest. The brush is made from straw fibers. The soap, if you can afford it, is coarse and smells of charcoal and citrus. If you can't, you use warm water and ash. No one enters the bath until they are clean. No one speaks above a whisper. No one splashes. The bath itself is hot, much hotter than you expected. You ease in slowly. The heat stings, then numbs, then begins to uncoil the knots from your calves and shoulders. Around you, others do the same. Some close their eyes. One old man hums softly through his nose. There is no music here. No candles. No perfumes. There is only water, wood, and steam. Back in your home, the process is different, but no less strict. Your mother heats stones in the fire pit, drops them into a barrel of water, then waits for the hiss to stop. She has done this for 30 years. She does not speak as she scrubs the floorboards with a rag and a bowl of vinegar water. She washes the walls with rice husk solution. She cleans the combs with hot ash and lemon peel. Why? Because soon a guest will visit, and in this world, a clean home is an honest home, a clean child, a marriageable child, a clean hearth, a safe hearth. Outside, the mountain wind moans low through the pine trees. Your father inspects the roof tiles for frost damage. Your brother stirs fermented bean husks in the barn. You carry snow to the kitchen, melt it, strain it, boil it again. Every drop is accounted for, even for the samurai. The ritual of bathing is layered with discipline. It is not luxury, it is obligation. A young warrior might bathe before meeting. His lord not for comfort, but to ensure no trace of dishonor clings to his skin. His topknot must be tied with exact tension. His robes must be freshly brushed. His breath must smell of mint or citrus peel. If he is summoned and found unclean, it is not seen as fatigue. It is seen as disrespect. In one case, a retainer was dismissed not for failure in battle, but for appearing at court with dirt beneath his thumbnail. His lord said nothing. But the letter of dismissal came the next day. No duel, no dispute, just the quiet collapse of his standing. In the capital, merchant families invest in small bath basins. They polish their courtyard stones with water and cloth. They keep cedarwood boxes filled with winter incense to mask the smell of mildew. Their children are taught to wash their hands before entering the tea room, not for hygiene, but for spiritual clarity, because in the rigid lattice of Edo life, impurity is a crack in the frame. It invites judgment, and judgment sticks longer than soot. By now you've memorized the signs. You can tell when someone has skipped the ritual. Their sleeves hang differently, their scent is wrong, their skin is dull. Our guest who smells of cold sweat, not smoke or rice vinegar, is a guest no one invites back. Even the beggars at the temple steps pour water from the trough onto their arms each morning, their hands shaking in the cold, but their eyes proud. They do not ask for pity, they ask for space, for dignity. And in this land, dignity is often just another word for cleanliness. So when the snow falls again, thicker than before, and the roof creaks under its weight, you wake early. You melt snow, you boil tea, you scrub your feet in silence. You place the comb back exactly where it belongs, not because someone is watching, but because they might be, and if they are, you want them to know. You are poor, yes, but you are clean. And in a society like this, that is the difference between being overlooked and being forgotten. But as the wind rises and the water steams in the pot, one question lingers just behind. Your breath. What does it cost to appear clean when everything around you is frozen, filthy, or already burning? It is the 13th day of the first month in 1702. Snow lies thick over the northern rice paddies of Echigo, now pressed down into packed, silver silence. Children carry pails to melt snow for the fire. A servant, no older than 12, cuts a frozen rope with a dull blade because it holds up a curtain heavy with frost. His master watches, not with pity, but with expectation. Inside the house, someone is dying. The room smells of camphor and wet straw. A priest arrives and is handed a warm cloth, not to dry his hands, but to cleanse them. The body, not yet cold, will soon be bathed, not for beauty, not for purification, but because the dead must pass cleanly into the next world. In feudal Japan, the body's last bath is the most important one of all. You've never performed a funerary wash before, but today you will. You heat water with 3 logs, no more. Firewood is too valuable. You mix it with cold snow until it's just warm enough not to shock the skin. You use cloth torn from a faded kimono. No color, no pattern, nothing that could offend the ancestors. You wipe the feet, the hands, the face. You do not scrub, you dab gently, as if to remind the soul where it once lived. When it's done, you add a pinch of ash to the basin. Not for cleansing, but for memory, because in this culture, ash remembers everything. It comes from rice stalks, from pine bark, from burnt prayers and split timber. It was used to wash the floors, to clean wounds, to scent the air. Now it will accompany the body beyond this room. In the months that follow, you begin to understand something deeper. Cleanliness in feudal Japan is not a practice. It is a performance, a constant, silent act of maintaining dignity in a world that offers very little of it freely. You see it everywhere. A rice farmer, shivering in a snow-wrapped field, stopping work at midday to pour cold water over his hands and wipe his face with a linen square. A widow brushing soot from the family shrine each morning, even as her home crumbles plank by plank. A traveling monk barefoot in the frost, carefully plucking stray hairs from his brow with bamboo tongs. Each one could let go, could stop caring, could say, "What does it matter?" But they don't, because what's at stake isn't appearance, it's identity. Identity. By spring, your household is thinner. The old woman next door has passed. The bathhouse down the hill burned during a late freeze. The ash pit is nearly full, but you still melt snow to wash your feet each morning. You still scrape your nails with a reed sliver before entering the village council room. You still iron your sleeve seams with a warm river stone wrapped in cloth, because one thing has become clear. In a world where almost everything, your class, your fate, your family name, is decided for you, the cleanliness of your body is one of the few things left that is wholly yours. And that is not a small thing. It is, in fact, everything. So as you prepare the year's final bath, you place the kettle carefully on the coals. You mix the bran. You check the water's heat by dipping your wrist. Not too hot, not too cold. You undress slowly. You crouch by the tub. You pour the first bowl of water over your shoulders, and for a few brief moments, as the steam rises and the night winds rattle the shutters, you feel something close to peace. Because in this fleeting, fragile world, where warlords rule and snow silences all, you are clean. And that means something, that means everything. It is late autumn. The rice fields stretch like golden silk under a grey sky. The harvest has begun, not with celebration, but with silence. The air smells of straw, wet earth, and smoke, and under every breath is the same unspoken worry. Will it be enough? Enough to feed your family, enough to satisfy the tax, enough to avoid punishment, because in this corner of the Tokugawa shogunate, rice is not just food, it is currency. It is status, it is obligation. You are a farmer. That means you are part of the most heavily taxed and carefully watched class in all of feudal Japan. A strange irony, perhaps. Peasants are at the bottom of the social pyramid, yet they carry the entire system on their backs. Not with speeches, not with swords, but with rice, grain by grain. The system is called nengu, the annual tribute. Each household is assessed after harvest. Your field is measured not by acres, but by yield, koku, a unit roughly equivalent to enough rice to feed one person for a year. One koku is heavy in the hand, heavier still when weighed against your survival. The tax rate typically 40 to 60%. In a bad year, it doesn't change. In a good year, it might increase. There is no formal appeal. The local magistrate arrives with 2 men and a set of lacquered boxes. They don't ask about your son's illness or the early frost. They don't care that your neighbor's ox died in the spring and you've been working both fields alone. They count the bundles. They inspect the polish of the grain. They make notes with brushes that do not tremble. The final number is written on rice paper. You bow as it's handed to you. The paper folds silently. You feel its weight in your sleeves all the way home. This year, you must give more. You do not have more. There are rules, of course. If you miss your quota, you may be fined. If you miss, again, your tools can be confiscated. If your absence from the fields leads to further shortfall, you can be imprisoned, or worse. But the most common punishment isn't steel or exile, it's starvation. You learn to stretch the leftovers. You learn which wild roots are edible and which only seem edible. You chew slowly. You speak little. You work longer hours to hide the shaking in your hands. And the entire time, the granary at the edge of the village grows full, because that rice is not yours. It is destined for the daimyo, the local lord, and beyond him for the shogun, whose distant palace in Edo runs on the backs of farmers who will never see its gates. The rice tax is more than policy. It is ritualized dependence. When you carry your bundles to the collection center, you do not just deliver grain. You submit. You reinforce your place in the order. You ensure that the samurai can eat, that the court can flourish, that the roads can be maintained, and that your family might survive long enough to do it all again next year. Some lords are fair. Others are not. Some allow festivals after the harvest. Others forbid them as distractions. Some offer small reductions in times of drought. Others demand payment in advance. Your lord? He is invisible. His banners hang on the gate near the shrine, but no one in your village has seen his face. Still, when you bow before the tax ledger, you bow to him. Because if you don't, your house may be marked. And once that happens, no neighbor will risk speaking to you. No priest will chant your name. No merchant will extend credit. That night, you sit with your family around the hearth. The rice pot is thin. Your mother slices radish into near transparency. Your father chews slowly and watches the door. You ask no questions. You don't need to. The numbers are written. The quota is final. Tomorrow you will wake before the rooster. Tomorrow you will carry the bundles. Tomorrow the system will take what it's owed. And as you stare into the fire, one thought refuses to leave. How long can you give what you know? Longer have. The granary stands like a silent judge at the edge of the village. Raised on thick wooden stilts, it's painted in the dull earth red used only for buildings that don't belong to anyone, and therefore belong to power itself. Its doors are bound by iron and prayers, not to protect the rice from thieves, but to remind you that it's not your rice anymore. The day of delivery begins before dawn. You and 30 other families gather near the collection post, each carrying your allotted share. Not more, never less. The bundles are tied in straw, cord tightly pressed and neatly labeled. Presentation matters. If your stack looks disheveled, they might inspect it harder. They might suspect you of shorting the lord, and that is a kind of treason. You wait in silence. The clerk sits at a low writing desk flanked by two assistants, in wool-lined coats. Their faces are emotionless. One reads your household name aloud. Another records the weight of your bundles with a calm that feels more like indifference than precision. When it is your turn, you step forward and bow deeply. You speak only when spoken to. The bundles are passed on to the scales. Your family produced 17 koku this year. The quota is 10. That leaves 7 for you, your wife, your 2 children, and your aging mother. 7 koku to last until next harvest. 7 koku to feed 5 mouths. 7 koku to sell or barter if your tools break, your roof collapses, or your son becomes sick again. You feel pride, briefly. Then doubt. You think, it's enough. But you also know, it might not be. The rice is stacked in the granary, layer by layer, floor to ceiling. The smell of grain, dry and faintly sweet, clings to your hands even after you wash. Some of that rice will stay in the province. Most will be carted to the capital, first on horseback, then by boat, then into warehouses in Edo that you'll never see. You imagine the nobles eating it with lacquered chopsticks, their sleeves too long to touch the bowls. You imagine the granary's doors closing behind you. You don't know when you'll see them open again. In the weeks that follow, the village shifts. Some families barter with merchants from the next province over, trying to stretch what's left. Others make secret trips into the hills searching for edible roots and mushrooms. You hear whispers of people adding bark to their rice porridge, shaved, boiled, strained, boiled again. It fills the stomach, but not much else. A child from the East Hamlet collapses from fever. His mother tries to sell her comb for a bowl of miso. No one will take it. Even charity has a quota. You begin to ration your own rice more carefully. Your mother eats only at night. Your wife claims she's already full, though you know she isn't. You learn to eat in silence, to chew slowly, to leave the last grain in the pot out of habit. You don't say what everyone is thinking. There's enough until there isn't. Still, the system continues. The magistrate rides through on horseback, escorted by 2 retainers. His sandals do not touch the mud. His robes are lined with silk. You bow, you say nothing, you do not meet his eyes. He stops once at the granary to inspect the logs. He reads the collection register. He nods. He rides on. And just like that, your entire year is accounted for. Not by your labor, not by your hunger, but by his glance. In the evenings, you run your fingers through what's left of your grain stock. You keep it hidden in a wooden chest sealed with iron nails. Not because you're afraid of thieves, but because you're afraid of hope, and in this world, hope is dangerous. Hope is dangerous. Hope tells you that next year might be better. Hope tells you that maybe, just maybe, someone will say, the quota is too high, but you know better. You know the doors of the granary open only once a year, and when they do, they don't open for you. So you close your eyes, listen to the wind tapping the shutters, and wonder, what happens when the tax takes more than just your rice? The winter hits earlier than expected. The river freezes in mid-November. The ground refuses to soften. And your family's rice chest, once neatly stacked and sealed with string, is now half empty. You count the bowls by sound. You chew each grain like it might answer a prayer. The tax has been paid. The granary stands full, sealed tight, protected by law and blade. But your neighbors are hungry. Not visibly, not yet. The hunger is still the polite kind. The kind that wears a smile and makes excuses. But soon that will change. In feudal Japan, open rebellion is rare. The social structure is strict, the punishment swift. But history does remember the quiet ones, the footnotes of unrest where rice, not swords, started the fire. In your village, it begins with whispers. A family in the South Field claims their bundle was undercounted. Another says the clerk intentionally raised their quota. No one dares name names, but the tension curls behind every greeting. Then, a delivery is missed. Just one. A small stack of rice never brought to the gate. No word, no excuse. A week later, another household underdelivers, then another. By the time the tax officer returns, it's clear something is wrong. The numbers don't add up. The stacks are uneven. The ledger doesn't match the rice. He demands names. No one speaks. The samurai guard arrives a few days later. No blades are drawn. But 3 men are beaten. 2 are jailed. 1 child disappears and Still, no one talks. The punishment is immediate. The magistrate doubles the levy for the following year. He suspends winter firewood subsidies. He posts a proclamation at the temple gate. Those who fail to deliver rice shall be considered enemies of order. The ink dries cold, but something has shifted. Not in the system, in the people. You notice it in the way villagers share dried daikon under the table at the shrine, in how one family helps patch another's thatch without being asked, in how your wife begins storing rice not in one place but in 3. The resistance isn't loud. It isn't glorious. It doesn't have a flag or a name, but it grows. By spring, the village finds strange new ways to adapt. Rice polishers work slower to accidentally overprocess the grain. Children are sent with cracked bowls to beg for miscounted kernels near the storage sheds. Merchant from a nearby province shows up with cheap barley and somehow forgets to report the trade. These aren't revolts. They are evasions, not strong enough to break the system, but enough to survive it. Years later, the tax remains. The granary still stands, but the magistrate no longer rides alone. His guards are thicker, quieter. His clerk double-checks the bundles twice. And you're older now, you've seen what the tax does. To the body, to the land, to the heart, and still you plant, you bend, you measure, you carry, but you also keep a secret ledger, one that records not just what the state takes in, but what the people keep for themselves. So the next time someone says, rice built feudal Japan, you nod, but quietly, you remember. It also almost broke it, not in fire, not in battle, not in law, but in silence, in ledger, in hunger. And still, the system endured, because as long as the rice came in, no one cared how many mouths were too afraid to ask for enough. Year 1681, the province of Shinano, nestled. In the highland valleys between jagged, snow-dusted ridges, the sun hasn't yet cleared the mountains, but the smell of smoke already curls from the chimneys of low, thatch-roofed homes. Inside, the hearths flicker dimly, barely warm. The morning begins not with chatter or music, but the rustle of straw mats and the sigh of aching joints. You are a peasant, a farmer specifically, and breakfast, if it exists today, will not be eggs nor meat nor anything sweet. It will be rice, if you're among the fortunate few. More likely a watery porridge of millet, barley or buckwheat, sometimes all 3, mashed together to trick your stomach into thinking it's more than it is. There's a wooden bowl at your side, steaming gently. Beside it, a wedge of pickled radish so sour it makes your teeth ache. You chew slowly, not because you enjoy it, because if you finish quickly, the hunger returns faster. One child eats beside you. The other is still asleep, or pretending to. Beata. She knows if she stays quiet, she won't be asked to eat less so her father can eat more before the fields. There is no sugar, no milk, no meat unless someone's chicken dies of old age and you're quick enough to claim it before the landlord hears. Food is not about pleasure, it is about survival, and just barely. The official rice yield was high this year, but most of it is already gone. Taxed, stored, or sent downriver to the capital. What you have left is a fraction of a fraction, swept into a corner of a barrel sealed tightly against mice and fate. Rice is status. You eat it on festival days, sometimes on the first day of planting, occasionally when someone dies. Most days you chew barley, it's rough, fibrous, and filling in the way gravel might be. On better days you mix it with miso paste, homemade of course, because store-bought would be absurd for someone of your standing. And always there's tea, roasted barley tea, dark and weak, served not for the flavor, but for warmth and the illusion of fullness. Protein comes from the river if the river permits it. A small fish, salted until it is more bone than meat, dried and left on a hook until it feels like wood. You don't eat the whole fish. You chew at it. You flavor your soup with it. And when that's done, you hang it back up for the next meal. And the soup, always soup. A watery miso broth with maybe 2 floating leaves, maybe a sliver of tofu, and maybe, if your prayers were heard this week, a mushroom. You drink it slowly, not because it's hot, but because it keeps your hands warm. There is no indulgence. There is no variety. The food does not change with your mood. It changes only with the season and with luck. Spring brings greens, wild bitter and often mistaken for poison if you don't know better. Summer means more barley, more millet, sometimes a stolen cucumber. Autumn brings yams and chestnuts, but rarely in quantities you could call abundant. And winter? Winter means fermentation, endurance and prayer. Pickled turnips, pickled radish, pickled anything. Roots and weeds soaked in brine and buried in clay jars beneath the floorboards. There are no feasts, there is only preservation. In the wealthier homes, merchants, artisans, those who walk upright even when it rains, you'll find rice more regularly. They eat it without apology, sometimes with sesame seeds or dried seaweed. They eat fish not as a garnish, but as the main course. They drink real tea. They even have enough flour for dumplings on feast days. But even they do not waste. Waste is a moral failing. Waste means you forgot how thin the line is between full and starving. The children in your village know this early. They are taught not to leave a single grain of rice in the bowl, not to complain if the soup is bland, not to ask where the meat is. That question is never answered. It is passed down like a proverb. You return from the fields at sundown. Your feet are blistered, your back is curved, and still you eat what is offered. Tonight, it's soup again, and barley, and pickled something you can't quite identify but eat anyway. The hearth crackles. Your daughter slurps quietly beside you. Your wife chews without looking up. This is what dinner looks like. This is what survival looks like. And as you lean back, sore and shivering, you wonder, what does indulgence even feel like in a life where hunger is inherited? Year 1682, the feudal estate of a mid-ranking samurai family near the shores of Lake Biwa. The snow has not yet arrived, but the chill in the air suggests it is watching. The fields outside have already emptied of their harvest. Now the work continues indoors, cooking, cleaning, and surviving with ritualized grace. If you're a peasant, the diet keeps you alive. If you're a samurai, the diet keeps you in line. It is easy to believe that with a title comes feasting, that armor equals appetite, that the sword hand is better fed than the one that tills soil. The truth is more complicated. The samurai eats last. It's tradition, it's etiquette, it's power disguised as humility. His lord eats first, then his lord's guests, then perhaps his wife. Then maybe, if there's enough left after honor is served, the samurai will take his place at the table. If not, he will wait. If he appears hungry, he is considered lacking in discipline. If he reaches too early, he is considered shameless. If he complains, he is no longer a samurai. Rice? Yes, more than the peasants, but not freely. The household must budget its grain carefully, especially in winter. A samurai's salary is measured in koku, but that doesn't mean he handles the rice himself. Instead, the stipend goes to the estate's management, which then allocates grain based on hierarchy, not hunger. You might own a katana and still eat cold soup. Their meals are not lavish. They are curated, sober, symbolic. A bowl of white rice, never. Overflowing. A side of grilled fish, cold by the time it reaches the samurai's tray. A piece of pickled plum tucked into a folded leaf. Maybe miso soup. Maybe stewed root. And always tea, no garlic, no onions, nothing that lingers or offends. Food is not meant to excite the senses. It is meant to discipline them. During formal meals, the samurai must kneel in Caesar, back straight, movements precise. The chopsticks must be held just so. The rice must be lifted, not dragged. Every act of consumption is a performance of composure. One wrong gesture, and you're not just rude, you're dishonorable. What happens when there's not enough? Then you bow deeper, because hunger in a samurai is not supposed to exist. And if it does, it must be buried beneath poise. It is said that a true warrior can go days without food and still kneel perfectly, that he can carry out his duties on nothing more than tea and silence, that he can starve with elegance. It's not always true, but the belief is strong enough to make many try. Now step down one rank. The merchants and artisans eat with greater variety, not because of respect, but because of loopholes. Merchants are officially low in the social order, but they handle money. They know how to stretch a coin. Their households have access to pickled delicacies, dried seafood, and even sweets. Pressed rice cakes, black sugar, mochi filled with red bean paste. They don't flaunt it. At least not openly. Too much decadence might attract attention from a hungry, underpaid samurai. Too little, and your household might forget why it's working at all. So you strike a balance. Invisible indulgence, a lacquer box with a false bottom. Her cake eaten behind a screen. A pot of white rice steamed only when the neighbors are busy. Then far below, back to your village. You've never seen a red bean cake. You've heard of it, of course. The merchant's boy described one once. How it was warm and soft, how it made him forget he was sad. You cannot imagine forgetting hunger, but you can imagine sweetness. It sounds like memory, or imagination, or foolishness. But you let yourself. Picture it, a soft rice cake wrapped in a leaf, eaten warm, no rationing. No guilt, no worry, just a bite. That night, you eat your barley and radish in the dark. The hearth is low. The soup tastes of salt and habit. Your children don't ask for more. They know better. You stare into the steam and wonder, if no one sees, you hungry? Does that mean you're not? Year 1683, the winter solstice. Snow falls quietly over the rooftops of your village. Smoke rises straight from the chimneys. Not because the air is still, but because the people are. It is too cold to waste movement, too empty to waste words. The pickled vegetables are nearly gone. The barley sacks are thin. The miso crock has been scraped so often the wood beneath has begun to splinter. You've eaten every spare root that wasn't bitter enough to poison. And still the days crawl forward, each asking for another meal you can barely make. This is not famine. No one is dying in the streets. No one is rioting. This is the ordinary starvation of winter, the quiet kind, the planned kind. In feudal Japan, hunger is not an emergency. It is a cycle. Everyone expects it, everyone prepares for it, and everyone learns, from the time they can walk, how to endure it without complaint. When the pickles run out, you boil radish, peels. When the soup grows thin, you drink more tea. When the rice is gone, you grind chestnut bark and mix it with millet. When there's nothing left to grind, you chew pine needles and pray. Not because it works, but because it reminds you that you still have teeth. The nobility writes poems about the seasons. You live them. They call winter crisp and serene. You call it bare. The samurai may fast on, purpose to sharpen the spirit. You fast because you have no other choice. The monks may chant through mealtimes. You stay silent because sound takes energy you can't spare. And through it all you eat. Very little, very slowly. You make your meals last as long as they need to. Sometimes that means chewing boiled rice husks until they dissolve. Other times, it means pretending the tea is a meal, and the hunger is just wind in the belly. Your daughter has stopped asking for sweets. That's how you know she's growing up. She eats her porridge with two hands, bowing to the empty space where vegetables used to be. There is one festival during winter, Oshogatsu, the New Year. You save all year for it. Or rather, you pretend to. You don't really have anything to save, but you try. Because tradition demands that you start the year with food, even if you begin it already hungry. A rice cake, shaped by hand. A sip of sweet sake. A bowl of zoni. Soup, with mochi and vegetables. Though the vegetables might be mostly symbolic, the idea is not indulgence, it is symbolism. To show the gods that you remember what abundance looks like. Even if you only had enough to fake it for one day. You light a candle, you eat slowly, you smile. It is the most food your family has seen in weeks, and tomorrow you'll go back to scraping the pot. By spring, the wild greens return. Not many. Not enough, but enough to say that the worst is over. You dig for mountain burdock, shred fern shoots into strips, boil bitter greens 3 times to make them chewable. It is not a feast, but it is not nothing, and that's enough to count as victory. And then the planting begins again. You bend. You seed, you weed, and you know what's coming. The quota, the granary, the long wait, the hunger, but you don't curse it. You bow to it, because this is not a failure. It is the system, and you are not expected to be full. You are only expected to survive. If you are lucky, you grow old. If you are very lucky, your children do too. And if you are extraordinarily lucky, they will live to complain about how the rice tastes thinner now than it did when they were young. That is your reward. To starve politely for long enough that someone else calls it tradition. The water is cold. Not just chilly, not uncomfortable. It is the kind of cold that makes your bones remember the mountains. And yet, you dip your hands in, then your face, then the back of your neck. No one winces, no one complains. You're not here for comfort. You're here to be clean. Cleanliness isn't optional. It isn't cosmetic. It's not a matter of how you smell, it's a matter of who you are. In this world, uncleanliness is suspicion, dirt is disgrace, and grime, real or imagined, is a mark on your spirit, a stain that soap may not fix. You are not noble. You are not wealthy, but still you scrub. You wake early to fetch water before the others. You kneel at the basin. You rub your face with a cloth that has seen too many winters. You dry your hands with a towel so stiff from air drying and sun bleaching, it might as well be made of woven bark. You do this every morning, without ceremony, without reward, because being clean is not about being seen, it is about being correct. The bathhouse is shared, a small wooden structure on the edge of the village. Its firewood is collected communally. Its chimney coughs smoke by dusk. Inside it is dim and hot. The steam does not rise in lazy clouds. It clings, heavy and quiet. You enter without speaking. You disrobe without looking. You bow almost reflexively to no one in particular. That's just what you do. Everyone bathes together. No partitions, no modesty, just skin, steam and silence. There is a rhythm here. You rinse first. You never enter the tub dirty. You sit on a low stool. You scrub with cloth and rice bran, or ashes mixed with warm water. Soap is rare, expensive, and smells like boiled earth. You scrub your arms, your chest, your feet. You never skip the feet. You rinse again. Only then, if all is in order, do you step into the water. The bath itself is not a place for talk. It is not a place for laughter. You soak with the solemnity of a monk and the posture of someone always slightly apologizing. The heat bites at your skin, but you do not move. You endure it. That is part of the ritual. The old man to your right has bathed here every third evening for decades. He nods at you once, that's enough. The boy to your left is scrubbing too hard, drawing pink lines across his shoulders. He's trying to erase whatever it was he did today. Dirt, yes, but also guilt, shame, worry. The bath accepts all of it. The water is clean when you enter. It must still be clean when you leave. Outside the wind is sharp. Your hair is wet and your robe is thin, but your skin is warm, the way a stone is warm long after it's left the fire. You walk home barefoot, not because you must, but because the earth feels different now, softened, almost forgiving. You are not relaxed. You are not refreshed. You are, for a little while, acceptable. You sleep better on bath nights, not because you're clean, but because no one has reason to think you aren't. And in this world, that's all anyone really wants. There's an order to everything, not just in society, but in the bathhouse too. You do not interrupt it. You do not question it. You simply follow the sequence. Arrive, bow, rinse, scrub, rinse again, soak. Speak only if spoken to. The towels are thin, folded, and never truly dry. They hang on hooks in the corner, damp from yesterday's hands and the day before's feet. You bring your own if you can afford it. If not, you share. Quietly, carefully. No one says thank you. No one needs to. The ritual is enough. Some arrive with their entire family, towels bundled in cloth, soap slivers kept in tied bits of old paper. Children go first. They're scrubbed quickly, sometimes roughly, their heads tilted back over wooden buckets as they yelp and splash. Mothers shush them. Fathers glance once, then return to their knees and their own washing. Others come alone. The elderly man who always folds his robe the same way. The merchant's apprentice, who hums softly under his breath when he thinks no one hears. The widow who never speaks, but always lights a stick of incense on the stone shelf near the tub. No one stops her. No one asks why. No one asks why. Some things are understood. There is no soap on your skin now. Only the soft scrape of ash and bran. You scrub until your skin shines, not in vanity, but because that's what's expected. You clean between your toes, behind your ears. You Rinse in silence, watching the water darken around your ankles, then clear again. The bath water itself, hot, steeped in cedar or pine, slightly cloudy, always reused, is holy in its own strange way. You do not disturb it. You do not splash. You sit still, shoulders just above the surface, eyes down. Not ashamed. Just disciplined. You may sit this way for 10 minutes or 2, but never too long. Staying too long is selfish. It makes the water less clean for the next person. There are no mirrors, no perfumes, no indulgent soaps with foreign names. There is only what is needed, and that's the thing. Cleanliness here isn't about feeling good. It's about being part of something larger, something older than anyone in the room. A shared belief that how you carry yourself, how you scrub your neck, fold your towel, rinse your feet, reflects how you live. How you respect your ancestors, your neighbors, yourself. It's not a private ritual, it's a public act of discipline. It's not about comfort. It's about not offending. When you dry off, you don't pat yourself gently. You rub briskly, almost mechanically, using a towel that's more utility than fabric. You dress quickly. The robe sticks slightly to your damp skin. Your hair is tied back. You place your wooden sandals on the threshold, facing outward. You never speak as you leave. You nod. You step back into the night. You carry the heat with you, not just the warmth of the water, but the warmth of having done the right thing in the right order. You are clean now, and that means you belong. You'd think it's about hygiene. That bathing is meant to keep people healthy, to stop illness, to wash away disease. That's part of it, but not the heart of it. In this world, cleanliness has less to do with health and more to do with morality. A dirty face suggests a dirty soul. A wrinkled robe hints at carelessness, and careless people are dangerous, to themselves and to others. No one says this aloud, but it's there. In the way your neighbors glance at your fingernails, in the way your Lord notices if your sandals are muddy when you kneel, in the way a wrinkle can make you invisible in the wrong room, so you bathe, even when you're tired, even when it's cold, even when the water stings your skin and the towel feels like bark and your knees ache from kneeling, because you are not allowed to look like you've suffered, only like you've endured. Cleanliness is inspection. Your appearance can be reviewed at any moment by a passing official, a village elder, a visiting monk. If your collar is uneven, if your skin smells of sweat or ash, if your hair has come loose, it's not just embarrassing, it's incriminating. And it doesn't matter how poor you are, how hard your day was, whether you had enough to eat. You could be covered in blisters and bruises from the rice fields. You still scrub your feet before you enter your home. There's always enough water to wash, even if there's none to drink. The towel you use is rough, sometimes borrowed, often reused, but it is cared for, folded carefully after use, hung on a bamboo rod, dried in the sun, beaten clean with a wooden paddle. It has no name, no pattern, just faded threads and the memory of too many winters. But it is part of your ritual, and that makes it sacred. You don't wash the towel often, but you don't stain it either. You don't treat it gently, but you don't discard it. The towel stays with you longer than some people do. When you dry your body with it, you press hard. You are not pampering. You are finishing a task. Removing the last trace of sweat, dust, and imperfection, you leave no spot untouched, no limb neglected. Even your scalp gets rubbed raw. It's not a cleansing. It's a restoration, so that when you dress again in a robe that smells faintly of wood smoke and wind, you aren't just warm. You're correct, presentable, acceptable. To be clean is to be taken seriously, and that's all anyone really wants. By morning, the towel will be stiff again. Dry and sun-bleached and waiting, you'll take it down, rinse it in the stream, fold it in half and begin again. Because in a world where you own little, control even less, and speak only when spoken to, how you bathe, how you dry, how you smell, that's something you still get to decide. That is where your dignity lives, quietly, between the steam and the silence. In the folds of a towel that never asks for praise, only that it be used, wrung out, and respected. You speak carefully here, slowly, thoughtfully, or not at all, because in this world a word can travel faster than a sword. And sometimes it hits just as hard. You don't interrupt, you don't speak above your rank, you don't offer opinions unless asked, and even then, you ask twice if the question was truly meant for you. This isn't fear. Not exactly. It's discipline. A way of surviving in a place where the wrong sentence, or even the right sentence said the wrong way, can erase everything you've built. There's no such thing as small talk when the ceiling listens and the floorboards remember. Home, your voice is soft. In public, it's even softer. You bow before you speak. You measure your tone. You rehearse every greeting, every apology, every thank you. These are not habits. They are precautions. A merchant once made a joke in front of a passing samurai. Something harmless, something playful. But the samurai didn't laugh. By sunset, the merchant was gone. No one talks about it now. They just bow a little deeper when walking past that same corner. And nobody jokes anymore. Children are taught silence before they're taught speech. They learn to bow before they learn to walk straight. In the evenings, they're told stories, not about monsters or heroes, but about mistakes. About the tailor who corrected his master. About the servant who spoke too soon. About the woman who whispered too loudly during a tea ceremony and was never invited back. These stories are caution, not entertainment. They are bedtime warnings, wrapped in politeness, because the true mark of maturity isn't knowing what to say. It's knowing when not to say anything at all. Sometimes, the rules are clear. Don't correct your elders. Don't speak during a superior's meal. Never address a lord directly unless spoken to. But more often, the danger is subtle. Too loud a laugh might imply arrogance. Too clever a phrase might sound like mockery. Too much honesty can look like defiance. So you nod. You smile. You say just enough to disappear into the social fabric, but never enough to stand out. And that's the goal, to speak like water flows, gentle, quiet, necessary, and forgettable. Even your apologies are carefully crafted. Not just, "I'm sorry, but this lowly one apologizes for the trouble my ignorance may have caused." You bow. You avoid eye contact. You offer a gift if you can afford it. Incense, a fan, a folded poem expressing your regret. And you mean it, even if you don't know what you did wrong. Because meaning it isn't the point, performing it is. It is. There is peace in silence, security in wordlessness. You sit in meetings, in gatherings, in shared meals and say nothing, and it feels safe, like armor, because words are sharp. But silence can save your life. And in this world, that's worth more than being heard. Some days you wake up with thoughts, strong ones, honest ones, but you keep them folded like spare robes tucked behind your teeth. You walk with them, you nod with them, but you do not let them out, not unless you're ready to pay for them. In this world, the quietest person is often the safest. Even when speaking is required, the goal is to say the right thing in the least amount of words, with the softest tone and the deepest bow. No opinion should ever stand taller than your posture. Formal settings have their own choreography. You kneel, you bow, you say the expected phrase. Not too early, not too late. It's not a conversation. It's a ceremony of correctness, a ritual of restraint. If you visit a superior, a lord, a magistrate, an elder, you speak only when invited. Even then, you lower your eyes. Even then, your voice barely rises above the sound of a sliding door. If you deliver bad news, you cushion it in poetry. If you offer praise, you downplay your sincerity, lest it sound manipulative. If you make a request, you begin by apologizing for daring to have one. The tea ceremony is the purest form of controlled speech. You greet the host. You compliment the setting. You admire the calligraphy scroll, the flower arrangement. You do it with precision, with humility rehearsed so well it almost looks natural. You talk about the weather, or the season, or a poem you once read about a similar day, in a different village, a different year. You do not talk about yourself. You do not ask questions. You do not joke. And when the tea is poured, you thank the host quietly. Not just for the tea, but for the opportunity to sit and breathe and prove that you know how not to ruin something delicate. Even in grief, you speak carefully. There's no wailing, no shouting at the heavens. You write a condolence poem. You send a letter sealed with quiet ink. You visit, you bow, you offer incense, and you leave. Mourning, like everything else here, is done with discipline. Because even sadness, if spoken too loudly, can draw attention, and attention is a risk. Among friends, you speak a little more freely. But even then, there are limits. You can tease a little, but never above your rank. You can share a joke, but only if it lands gently. You can complain quietly, but only about things that don't matter, like the weather, or the cost of sandals, or the latest gossip from the next village over. Never about the Lord, never about the taxman, never about the rules. And so silence becomes your second language. You learn to speak with your posture, your eyes, your timing. A slow breath, a pause before answering, a carefully delayed nod. Your opinions become gestures, your thoughts become glances, and your survival becomes a performance of soft obedience. It's not that you have nothing to say, it's that you've learned when not saying it is the only way forward. By now your silence is no longer a strategy, it's muscle memory. You open your mouth only when the room allows it, and when it doesn't, your thoughts retreat into your hands, your tasks, your posture. You can live an entire day without saying more than 6 words. Some days it's fewer, not because you fear punishment, but because you've been taught that too many words can make your presence inconvenient, and in this society, being inconvenient is the first step toward becoming expendable. There's a saying, rarely spoken aloud of course, that a sharp tongue is worse than a dull blade. A blade cuts the body, a word the clan, the difference, a wound from steel might heal. A wound from speech can carry for generations. Your family name matters more than your comfort, so you train your voice to betray nothing. Not irritation, not sarcasm, not even enthusiasm, which can be mistaken for self-importance if shown too boldly. You answer questions with deference. You deliver messages like you're passing fragile glass, and when you are reprimanded, justly or unjustly, you bow deeper and thank the person correcting you. It's not about agreeing, it's about continuing to exist peacefully. Those who don't understand this balance usually learn quickly or vanish. A traveler from a distant province once criticized the village headman's judgment in a public meeting, not harshly, not even rudely, just directly. By the next market day, he was gone. No arrest, no sentence, just not there. His name wasn't mentioned again. No one wanted to be associated with an echo of defiance. But here's the strange part. Silence isn't always oppressive. Sometimes it's protective, a kind of armor made of stillness, a signal to others that you know the rules, that you understand your place, that you can be trusted not to make things uncomfortable. In the right setting, silence makes you useful, even powerful, because in a world where everyone is speaking carefully, the one who knows how to listen, truly listen, becomes valuable. Not feared, not praised, but valued. Sometimes a senior official might call on you to serve tea in a meeting. You bow. You move quietly. You say nothing. But your presence is noticed, not as a servant, but as someone who understands the temperature of the room. That understanding can carry you further than talent or ambition or even loyalty, because those things require action, and action is always louder than silence. When you finally speak, when you're asked a direct question in a private moment or invited to give an opinion on a delicate matter, your voice surprises even you. It sounds calm, steady, precise, because you've spent years preparing for this exact moment. You say what needs to be said, no more, and you bow. Not because you're unsure, but because you've mastered the art of disappearing exactly when you should. Silence in feudal Japan is not absence. It is presence, held tightly, a form of communication where nothing is wasted, and everything, posture, glance, breath, speaks on your behalf. So yes, you have a voice. You just don't always use it out loud. Because here, in this world, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. And that's the lesson power teaches here, not through speeches but through silence. You don't need chains when the system is built to hold you in place with ritual and expectation. You learn to move carefully, speak less, and disappear exactly when you should. Because in feudal Japan, power doesn't scream. It whispers. And if you're still awake, maybe now is a good time to let go of the weight. Close your eyes and remember, here, survival is quiet. Good night.